Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hedge School with the Talamh Bio, and it's presentations with different members of Talamh Bio and some of our core group members as well. So today I'm talking to Fergal Smith, County Clare, Moyhill Farm, and I visited Fergal a few weeks ago and I'm very impressed with his variety of animals on the farm. But so really, it's about using animals as tools, and I got very inspired by that to come back here and get a few pigs. Talking to Daddy about pigs all the time now. So getting rid of them brambles. So hi Fergal, welcome. How are you?
I'm good, Rita. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for doing this. It's great. It's unfortunate we can't be all there in person, but yeah, it's great. It's better than nothing. So
exactly. So I'm just going to open up to you. You can talk about what you're doing in Moyhill and the use of animals, whatever you like to get into. So
yeah,
I
okay.
I recorded here. So yeah, so welcome. Yeah, Fergal.
Yeah, cheers, Rita. Yeah, I suppose a lot of people would know me and Moyhill Farm as more as a veg producer. Because that's my background, that's what I grew up doing, market gardening, that's what my parents still do up in Mayo. And so when I started the farm here, that's what I initially started because that's my background and that's what I know, you know what to do. And also animals is a bigger commitment and it's a bigger infrastructural kind of investment to get up off the ground. So we've been gradually integrating more animals over the years, but yeah, I kind of want to bring animals into the conversation to the people who are maybe very much thinking the market gardening vegetable world is the savior to all our world's problems. And being very much involved in market gardening my whole life, and I always will be, and I always enjoy doing it. But it isn't a regenerative practice per se. Like you can look after the soil and you can make sure you're not depleting it. But the act of market gardening is an input and an extraction enterprise. And it's, man imposing a market garden on this piece of land. Like it's not natural for a market garden to exist. We create it. It feeds us with our fresh vegetables and it's great. It's a very clear, tangible enterprise that you can start and you have this output, and yeah, we all need nutritious vegetables to eat. But for me, I'm more passionate about the regeneration, like the regeneration of land, the regeneration of our water, regeneration of our communities. That's the stuff that I feel that is crucially important. We always talk about sustainability, and Kevin Dudley there said the other day on our email group, we need to stop that because there ain't that much to sustain anymore. We need to be regenerating. We've done a lot of damage in the last 50 years. So regeneration is my real motive. And so then that's the main objective for me. And then whatever form that has to take is what I'm most interested in. So, I started off with market gardening, but I quickly realized when I was doing it very hands-on myself that you're not really going to regenerate large tracts of land or landscapes through gardening, because it's very much a man-made thing where your inputs and outputs, like I said, we obviously need it and it's very important, but it's not the style of farming that's going to regenerate our landscapes. It does need to be done very well, and that's what's very important. But it's the management of our landscapes is how we're going to look after our carbon levels, our biodiversity, our water quality, all these things. And how do we manage landscapes? We can use tools like planting trees, which I've been very much involved in over the years, and I've planted thousands and thousands of trees, and integrating them as windbreaks and alleyways, and integrating fruit trees in your fields and all that stuff, which is again, really good stuff, but still it's not managing the whole system. There's a big conversation around rewilding, and we could let land go completely wild, which is lovely and a nice romantic idea. And, you know, there can be great results, but realistically, we need to be letting go like huge, huge tracts of land to let a full ecosystem operate how it's supposed to function without all the right makeup of animals. Letting land go wild, you just get a scrubby, overgrown land, and trees do start to come, and it does create biodiversity, but there's a lot more potential in land if it's managed a little bit more holistically is the term and the style of management that I'm really interested in. And that's, so this motivation of regeneration, I've been in looking around and seeing what the best things that are out there, and I came across Alan Savory, who a lot of people will know, and yeah, that's been the first time I've really got kind of properly inspired on a bigger picture and a bigger scale of how we can manage the systems. Because the systems of biodiversity, animals, food production, community, you know, all these things, they're all interwoven and they're very, very complex. You know, it's trying to manage the wildlife versus feeding ourselves and the quality of our water and all this stuff it's a lot to manage. And to think there's going to be, you know, some scientist is going to give us the rules and how to do it is kind of, yeah, it's a mad concept. It's not going to work. We have to think very objectively and holistically on the whole system and how it works for that area, because one set of rules and good ideas might work great up in Ballinasloe, but they're not potentially going to work in West Clare. So every way we manage any landscape has to be thought in a holistic view on how, you know, how will this decision affect this area and this biodiversity and this community, and what it's going to do down the line. And thinking, you know, the holistic management thinking, I would really invite everyone to explore even a little bit on a little bit of its fundamentals. But, you know, some of the things are, you know, you should be making decisions that are going to last 1,000 years. How you're thinking it's going to look in 1,000 years. And, you know, we don't have any government or farming organizations making decisions around 1,000 years. But that's the kind of view I would see we need to look at if we're trying to really turn around degraded, damaged land. You know, we can't expect us to fix it tomorrow, so we have to make decisions that are longer term. But the amazing thing about nature is, you know, the slogan is give nature half a chance and it will thrive. Like, it wants to bounce back, it wants to thrive. So there's a really simple loop that holistic management uses. So is first you make a plan. So you look at your context you're in, the amount of what you're managing. Like, is it a 1 acre market garden? Is it 100 acres? Is it 1,000 acres? You know, you look at what you're managing and you sit down and you make the best plan you can on what you think is going to regenerate land, and using the tools of animals and trees and, you know, all these different tools that are there, technology, and then you make your plan. But the number one thing that I love about holistic management is when you make that plan, and they say make the plan. It doesn't have to be perfect, just make a plan. That's the key. You make it, but as you're making it, you know you're wrong. Like, assume you're going to be wrong, because we are not smart enough to understand what nature wants. You know, nature is far more complex and, you know, interwoven in complexities that we'll never ever understand. But we make a plan, we go with it, assuming we've probably made the wrong decision, and then we monitor. So as we've made the decision and we're going on this plan, we're now watching what happens, and we're looking for something to go wrong. So rather than us trying to drive through our idea and tell everyone we're right and try and prove we're right all the time, we actually admit that we're probably going to be wrong in this, but we're making the best plan we could possibly make. And then as we see it going wrong, we start to control the problem. We replan, and then we go again, and then we monitor and we see it going wrong, and then we make adjustments. And that's the only way we can really learn, or be humble enough to admit that we're probably going to be wrong, and then just keep changing the plan. and then monitor it again, and then change it again. And we'll get closer and closer to a place where we are looking after the biodiversity, we are looking after the welfare of animals, crops, the community, finances, all of it, that are all, we're not going too heavy on, it's all about biodiversity, and we're not feeding the community, and not the farmers not making any money, and we're not all about money. We have to get this balance, but we just have to keep monitoring and the feedback loop going back in to see. So with that, that's what I have done maybe the last 4 years. I've been doing this holistic management training, which you can do online now. So 3LM is the company that do the training for the UK and Ireland. And it's over, I don't know, they can do it in 3 sections, and there's a series of weeks. So if anyone's interested, I'd recommend looking up that. So I've done that. And then off the back of that, and you look at, you're managing a piece of land, like we have 66 acres here that we're managing. Me managing, 1-2 acres of a market garden, I'm not getting to manage the whole system. Yeah. So what's inevitably happened to me is I'm looking at the whole system, and I want to manage it in the best way possible. And I suppose this is the bit that I'm most passionate about, is the animals are the solution. And for some reason, well, we know probably a lot of the reasons, but there's a lot of bad press around animals. Animals are the problems for releasing carbon and all this kind of stuff, and we shouldn't eat meat. But it's kind of ironic, whereas actually to regenerate soil, the only thing we can actually do it in a sustainable or regenerative way is with animals. Like, animals is what built the soil in the first place. So it's the moving of animals. It's basically management. So you are managing when the animals and how long they stay on a piece of land. And it's quite sublime, like the sun shines, grass grows, an animal eats it. You move the animal, it comes back around, and the grass is growing again. There is no inputs. There doesn't have to be inputs with animals. The earth has evolved with animals without inputs. And if we can manage the ecosystem with animals in it, we can actually, totally have healthy, thriving animals and an ecosystem with no inputs. And that to me is, that's what I'm getting most excited about. And so what we have got into, we had pigs originally since day one, because all the land that we've acquired has been very rough and overgrown. So we'd always put the pigs in an area, they kind of clear it, and then we might plant trees, or we let it go back to pasture. So they're good for like starting with a blank canvas, but they're not a regenerative tool, I would say, pigs. They are quite destructive. So don't think pigs are going to come and, build soil. They're going to rip your soil to pieces. But when your land is kind of totally kind of stagnated and stale and overgrown, it's a good starting point. And then we have Dexter cows, and we have sheep. We got some Jacob sheep this year, and so that's the kind of, the cows and the sheep together are called a flood, and that's because the reason why I'm doing that, because the sheep here, again, the land is quite rough. The sheep go really well with all the kind of rough forage, so when we graze them together, it's a nice system. And I'm moving them every day, sometimes twice a day. And then we also have turkeys for Christmas, and the turkeys are great. There's 160 turkeys this year, and it'll make a lovely Christmas dinner for a lot of people. They won't get a better turkey probably anywhere. But to be honest, they don't make a whole pile of money. The whole point for me of doing it is I'm trying to kickstart our land. Our land has been, not managed well previous to us being here. And the poultry it's not a regenerative enterprise in a lot of ways, because I'm buying in all this feed, all this grain, as in, a huge input into the system. But what it is it's a kickstart for the pasture. So I move the turkeys every 2 days behind the cows, and they put down huge amounts of fertility with their manure, because of the high grain input they take. And they're also great for trampling. So a lot of our kind of grass is quite old and stale and whatever, and the turkeys are great for trampling. So the turkeys are a tool. They are putting down all this fertility, and then we had them last year, and now as of a year later, the grass anywhere the turkeys have been is like, totally refreshed and kickstarted. So using animals to see how you can manage the whole system and get it going. So I'd phase out the turkeys probably down the line where we just have grass-fed animals and there is no inputs. There's just sunlight, grass, animals, happy animals, and then a byproduct is food, really healthy food for people, which is a lot more resilient than we see in all our changing climatic extreme weather for market gardens. Like, I'm seeing it every year that it's just getting trickier and trickier. You get like, really bad wind in spring or anytime in the summer, and it can wipe out a lot of stuff, or late frost or early frost. So it's tricky, whereas animals are a bit more robust as long as you keep them fit and well. So I'm finding it very exciting, the whole regeneration of land, and just monitoring, just bringing the animals through the land and seeing the land bounce back like so well. It's phenomenal to watch, actually. And then you see then, especially going into next spring, when you see the grass come back really good, and the amount of biodiversity because of it. And people don't link animals with biodiversity, but because land or grass is being trampled correctly and manured properly and then given enough rest, we get amazing amounts of bugs and insects and flies and bees and flowers, and it's just amazing, where they weren't there before. So animals are a tool to create biodiversity and build soil, and so that to me is really exciting. And it's interesting because we have a predominantly animal-based farming system in this country, but yet it's probably nearly all of it is probably degenerative. It's probably all having a negative impact on biodiversity and on grassland and on soil and not building soil. So it's kind of ironic where we are doing the enterprises that actually could be building soil if it was just tweaked. And it just comes down to a management. That's what's lacking here. And we've never been given a management tool or a way for farmers to know how to manage the whole system. We don't get it in any agricultural school or anywhere. It doesn't get handed down from any, farmers. They're all kind of just getting roped into an industrial model. Whereas if we were handed a management tool that looked after all these complexities, I think we could very quickly turn this country from a degenerative farming model to a regenerative one. And that to me is the most potential and the most exciting thing that's going on for me. And I think, if we can get more farmers learning about holistic management, they'll see that the benefits are all for the farmer and the land. The land's going to benefit, but so will the farmer, because they're not going to have inputs. They're going to have healthy land, they're going to have healthy animals, and essentially that's going to pay in the pocket eventually. So no, it is a transition, and that's the thing that farmers find tricky, changing from one way to another. But I think, we need a few more regenerative farms in the country, proving the model of land being regenerated through the movement of animals. And I think, farmers will love to see their land do the same from less inputs. So I think, it's only a matter of time. And I just, I hope farmers are out there and interested and look into holistic management and the likes of, and there's other kind of forms of it. The future could be very, very bright if we just change tack a little bit in our farming methods. That's me.
Yeah, well, exactly. I totally agree with you, Fergal. I think if there was more farms as an example, I mean, your one's a great example. At least, it's almost like, that's why I like the idea of a hedge school of Talamh Bio, things you aren't taught in the agricultural college, because I'm doing my green cert right now, and really there's nothing on using animals. I mean, they don't even call them animals, it's economic units and grazing platforms. And that's really what you're up against, in terms of using animals as tools. Then it's just completely radical, you know what I mean? So, but you're right. I mean, that's what was always done, and it's you know, why would you not mimic nature that's been successful for thousands of years? You know, so you know, Ireland can grow grass, and maybe you have hit on something there with the lack of inputs, since it is a massive business. But still, I mean, it's like, you know, we have to find a balance somewhere. I feel like there's, you know, not many, like some people would really be sparked by this and say, oh, I'd love to try that. And other people would just prefer the kind of easier life, if you know what I mean. Because it is a bit more hard work. But I mean, farming's always been hard work, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a really interesting one. That's the conversation I have with any of my neighbours. They're like, "Oh, Jesus, a lot of work though, all that moving fences and
Yeah.
out there." I find it interesting now. Obviously, I'm not doing it their way, but you know, they had to pay for a slatted house, and they have to pay for contractors to cut silage. You could have none of those inputs, none of those costs. You know, how many hours do you have to work to pay for those inputs? And you know, it's regular, and it's every day that you do this 20 minutes to, you know, an hour of fencing or whatever it is, a little move. But you don't have, yeah, this big huge day of making silage or any of that stuff. There doesn't need to be. Like, it just needs to be a little, kind of constant, and you end up building a lovely relationship with your animals. You know, they're well fed, and there's a lot less risk. You know, there's a whole lot less risk, and it's enjoyable. Like, you're managing the whole system, where you're not relying on the big tractors and the big this to keep you going. And yeah, I think it's an empowerment knowing that you can manage your farm with very little. And yeah, I think farmers would just need to do it for a little while to see the difference. And if you saw the price difference at the end of the year of, you know, you might have a few less animals than farmers have at the moment, because you can't carry as many animals outside over the winter. But if you don't have to put all the inputs in, then that few less animals, you know, that's where you have to do the maths. But I can't really talk too much about it, because I'm only in my early days of doing this, and I'm very excited about it. But there is a lot of holistically managed farms, not in Ireland, unfortunately, but through the world, and they are proving the model. Like, they're proving that they don't have a huge turnover, but they have a profit margin, you know, and that's the difference. And they don't have risk. They have a lot less risk, and that's the bit we really need going forward. You know, if climate's going to get more erratic all the time, we need very resilient animals and land, and like buffers of, you know, good topsoil and good water retention and all these things, and not be relying on a big kind of agribusiness system, whereas those costs don't go down. Like, those costs are always going to be there, and if you have a bad year and you still have to front up those costs, that's, you know, it's a stressful place for farmers to be. So yeah, I think it's definitely a mental shift, thinking differently. But if you can have lower, you know, inputs, then your outputs don't need to be as high, and we just have to kind of show the finances, I think, to farmers in the next few years that it can be done. And yeah, hopefully it'll go that way. I think it has to anyway.
Well, I think it has to too. And I think, you know, what you're saying there about you know, I talk to some of the older farmers and they'll say that's a young man's game, you know, but I mean, of course, we are trying to inspire a young generation of farmers, you know, like, you know, a lot of the farmers are 70 plus, and yeah, they've done their, you know, the start of their farming lives were very holistic, really, and this kind of midsection now and towards the end. So yeah, a lot of people are caught in a trap. But this sort of it is education though. There's a certain, you know, if there's a certain book that everyone's read, this is the particular book that I have, you know, it's you know, that's what's put out there by Chagas. So it's just a balance. It's just another way to learn. It's like any university of life is like that. So but that gave us some really good food for thought, Fergal. Thanks for that. Really enjoy like observing your farm over the couple of years, and you know, that's why I continue to just every year just drop in and see what improvements have been made, and then you'll be able to kind of have more you know, facts as well about money saving and regeneration and all that sort of thing, you know, because that's kind of, at the end of the day, yeah, you're right. People want to be able to keep their farms, so if you can save money in the long run, you know, that would be great. So yeah, thanks for that. Now that was a Fergal there with the regeneration, holistic land management. What was the name of that book that inspired you?
Well, it's Alan Savory, and he set up the Savory Institute, which is a global network. And then holistic management is the framework that they use. And then in Ireland, the training is through a company called 3LM, and you'll see their courses up on Knots quite regularly.
Okay, 3LM. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cheers to that, Fergal. Okay. See you in 10, 10, 20.
Cheers.
Cheers.